Throughout the Ice Age, which lasted from about 1.7 million years ago to around 11,000 BC, Ireland was geographically linked to the European continent. For much of this time, the country was covered by an ice cap, which advanced and retreated according to the various warm and cold phases and global weather patterns. No one knows exactly when humans first arrived in Ireland, but it is believed that the first humans in Ireland arrived somewhere between 8000 BC and 6500 BC, and they crossed from Britain along one of the several land bridges that existed at the time. Many wild animals also made the crossing, but some, such as beavers, roe deer, wild cattle, otters, and snakes, never made it over in time. As the climate warmed, the ice melted and the sea levels rose, causing the land bridges to disappear forever beneath the waves. The first human settlers in Ireland were hunter-gatherers. Evidence from the earliest known settlements showed that they seemed to have dined on duck, pigeon, and grouse, along with nuts and berries. Fish was also a major part of their diet. The remains of eels, flounder, salmon, and sea bass have all been identified. Also, pigs and hares may have been hunted with the help of dogs. Their weapons were mainly flint arrows and spears, although stone axes were also made, most notably from factories in County Antrim in present-day Northern Ireland. These porcelainite axes were probably Ireland's first large-scale exports and have turned up in far-reaching archaeological sites right across the British Isles. The early Stone Age Irish would have spent much of their time on the move, seeking out new hunting grounds in winter, and then probably returning to established sources of food in summer. Ulster and Leinster probably saw the first colonies, but exploration inland must have been severely limited by the dense forest and scrub. Lakes and rivers were the only way to travel at speed. For at least 3,000 years, these hunter-gatherers lived undisturbed in Ireland. Over the whole island, these Stone Age people may not have numbered more than a couple of thousand. They made little impression on the landscape over this particular time period. During those 3,000 years, the rains became more persistent, with cold winters and hot summers becoming less frequent. The only technological advance that these early inhabitants made was an increase in the size of the stone implements they produced. At around 4000 BC, a dramatic transformation of the Irish economy began. Until then, this small scattered population had lived exclusively by foraging, trapping, and hunting. Now they began to clear the land of trees, to create pastures for domestic stock, and cultivation ridges for growing crops. Improved farming techniques were adopted in Ireland during this time, spreading from the Middle East, where they had emerged some 3,000 years earlier. The first Irish farmers quickly began clearing forests for cultivation, and by 3400 BC, the first farm animals had been introduced. Cattle, sheep, and goats seem to have been already domesticated when they were brought over by settlers arriving from Britain. It is thought that these early colonists came from southwest Scotland to the counties of Antrim and Down, which they could see on a good day with the naked eye over the North Channel. Longer voyages may have been made further south across the Irish Sea, but the chances of cattle surviving in small open boats with their legs tethered must have been much slimmer. Also, starting in this time period, farming was helped by a significant improvement in the climate, with average temperatures 1 or 2 degrees centigrade higher than the present day. The tree line was around 300 meters higher than today, and this allowed the people to till the soil and graze their stock on high ground. As farming techniques improved and the population rose, communities became more settled. More complex houses began to replace simple huts and shelters. Near Cookstown in County Tyrone, the oldest Neolithic house in either Britain or Ireland was found in 1969. The rectangular dwelling, 6 meters by 6.5 meters, was partly made of wattle and daub walls, the remainder consisting of split oak, placed upright in trench foundations. Substantial posts evidently marked the position of thatch roof supports. As Ireland's Neolithic farmers removed much of the forest canopy, cleared the scrub, worked the ground for crops of corn, tended their herds of livestock, they soon created settled communities which grew in numbers and wealth. Firmly believing in an afterlife, and laying claim to the lands they occupied, they venerated the bones of their ancestors. Archaeologists call these monuments megaliths, after the Greek words for large stones. More than 1,200 megalithic monuments have been identified in Ireland. The Carrowmore complex in County Sligo, on flat land looking up at Knocknarea, is the largest megalithic cemetery in the whole of Europe. To view the array of around 85 portal tombs, passage graves, and chambered burial mounds would have been an amazing experience for the early Irish viewer. Court cairns, the earliest megalithic monuments, were probably some sort of a temple, where farming communities paid respect to departed ancestors and invoked magical help to ensure good harvests. One of the most impressive court tombs is at Creevy Kill in County Sligo. It has a characteristic semicircular forecourt, constructed with massive stones and paved with cobbles, leading to a wedge-shaped mound 70 meters long, with chambers for the dead, roofed with large flat slabs. Portal tombs or dolmens might be the most striking reminders of Ireland's Stone Age farmers, particularly when seen against the skyline, built of 3 or more great upright stones, carrying a massive capstone sloping downwards towards the back. Capstones of enormous size, sometimes brought from a considerable distance, had to be placed on the stone uprights, presumably hauled up earthen or stone ramps, by men using oxen, ropes, timber sledges and rollers, and then lifted in stages by means of levers and platforms, raised gradually to the required height. The most awe-inspiring creations of Neolithic farmers in Ireland are the passage tombs, regarded as the first great achievements of monumental architecture in prehistoric Europe. The most magnificent are to be found in the huge necropolis in the Boyne Valley, County Meath. This includes Douth and Noath, the latter being a great tomb of carefully layered sod, shale, clay and stones, surrounded by 18 smaller graves. Here in the large mound, 2 long passages were carefully given an equinoctial orientation, one to receive the sun when it rose on March 20 to 21st, the spring equinox, marking the start of the sowing season, and the other on September 22nd, 23rd equinox, to celebrate the harvest. On top of a small hill overlooking the Boyne is the finest passage grave of them all, named Newgrange. Towards the end of the 4th millennium BC, a great mound, just over 103 meters in diameter, was raised using some 200,000 tons of material from the Boyne a kilometer away. It is faced all over with slabs of sparkling white quartz and surrounded by 97 curbstones, many of them elaborately carved. The 24-meter passage raises gently to a burial chamber with 3 niches, each containing shallow stone basins. Archaeologists were astonished at the dryness of the passage in the chamber when discovered. The slabs forming the roof slope were placed slightly downwards from the center to prevent water percolating down. Also, they had been caulked with sea sand and burnt soil and etched with grooves to drain off rainwater. It was at the winter solstice in 1968 that the most renowned feature of Newgrange was discovered. It was noticed that the sun, as it rose above the horizon to the southeast at 8:58 a.m., cast a pencil-thin beam of light into the center of the burial chamber, striking the triple spiral motif carved in the deepest recess of the tomb. 17 minutes later, it was gone. The ray of sunlight reaches here only on the day of the winter solstice. The discovery of copper, sometime after 2000 BC, heralded the start of an Irish metalworking industry, which became renowned in Western Europe. This was a time when Egypt's second golden age of the Middle Kingdom flourished. The Hittites were invading Anatolia, the Mycenaeans were advancing into Greece, and the Minoan Sea Empire, centered on Knossos, was approaching its zenith. Cork and Kerry were the country's main copper mining centers, and it is thought together they produced a massive 370 imperial tons of finished copper. Only 1,650 pounds of copper and bronze has been discovered from pre-1400 BC Ireland, which means the Irish probably had a healthy export trade with mainland Europe. The Cork and Kerry copper industry left behind the only known examples of prehistoric mines in Europe outside Austria. There are at least 25 mine shafts clustered together on Mount Gabriel near Skull, County Cork. They seem to date from between 1500 BC and 1180 BC. Bronze, which is a mixture of copper and tin, and gold, also emerged at this time and quickly became sought after. A bronze dagger or axe head was far superior in its strength and cutting edge to stone. Also, the metal was easily worked. It would be poured molten into a stone mold, cooled, and hammered into shape, and it could be customized with magical symbols. Irish bronze metalworking reached a high point early in the Bronze Age. Gradually, new weapons became available: the spearhead, the rapier, and by 800 BC, the sword. While the southern Mediterranean's Bronze Age leaders were being engulfed by waves of Central European barbarians, the West was left alone to develop its own distinctive bronze and gold industry. For Ireland, it was the apex of a golden age. As well as producing vast quantities of metalware, the Irish were very eager on burying it. Numerous treasure troves have been dated to this era, and there must have been a number of reasons why concealment was so important. The Darius hoard found between 2 lakes in County Offaly during the 19th century amounted to more than 200 items. Among these were 5 swords, leaf-shaped spearheads, numerous axe heads, gouges, chisels, knives, and instruments which may have been razors. There were also crodles, thought by some to be weights used in trading, but by others to be modeled on bull scrotums and used by fertility cults. Gold hoards were also relatively common in Ireland, which confirmed the country's lofty status as a major European gold work producer. The quality of the materials and degree of craftsmanship matches or exceeds any other late Bronze Age society. Irish ornaments were surely highly prized throughout the ancient world. Influences from abroad clearly impressed the Irish, and designs of German and Scandinavian origin began to creep into their work. There also seems to have been a trading link from the southern Mediterranean, across southern France, and up the western seaboard of Europe. Irish gold ornaments would be exchanged for items like spearheads, swords, and new axe designs. In terms of its standing in Western Europe, it is thought that Ireland was relatively richer in the late Bronze Age than it has ever been, either before or since. By the middle of the last millennium BC, once powerful kingdoms across Europe were no more. Hittite power was but a memory, Knossos was in ruins, and the Mycenaeans, once conquerors, were now the vanquished. Barbarians from the north and east, advancing on horseback and with their superior metallurgical skills, were transforming the ancient cradles of civilization. These upheavals sent shockwaves westwards to the Atlantic seaboard. Pushed from behind and seeking to conquer new lands, fresh arrivals in Ireland brought with them new cultures and more sophisticated weaponry. One of the most impressive ritual offerings of gold to be found in Ireland was the Broighter Hoard, secreted in a bog in County Londonderry. It includes a model boat with oars, a cup, necklaces, and a torque with intricate swirling patterns. The torque, with its distinctive style and model of execution, demonstrates indisputably that the Celts had arrived in Ireland. Modern archaeologists prefer to think of a steady infiltration from Britain and the European mainland over the centuries. The first Celtic speakers may have come to Ireland as early as 1000 BC. They were arriving in greater numbers from about 500 BC, equipped with iron weapons, led by nobles on horseback or in chariots, and began to command the countryside from their hill forts. They brought the native people of Ireland under subjection, and the country was changed forever.